It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the ministry this afternoon. This meeting is to provide the opportunity and platform to brief the press and the general public on the status of rosewood exploitation in Ghana. I will begin with the historical perspective of rosewood operations over the past 8 years, provide highlights of the situation since the current administration took over power. I will highlight on current actions being pursued to regulate rosewood exploitation and then conclude on some specific directives. Ladies and gentlemen from the media, rosewood is one of the tree species found in the Middle Belt and northern parts of Ghana. It was unknown timber species and used for charcoal production and fuel wood for the rural household until about 8 years ago, when it gained international recognition and permits were granted to few timber merchants for export. In 2012, the ministry's attention was drawn to the fact that the species was being harvested indiscriminately by charcoal producers, farmers, and illegal operators. In view of this, the harvesting and the export of rosewood was temporarily suspended on 31st of August 2012 by the then Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Mike Hammer. The ban was publicly announced through a press release by the Honorable Minister, and all rosewood contractors with valid permits were given 3 months grace period to evacuate their lying logs before the suspension became effective. On the 5th of October 2012, Honorable Mike Hammer lifted the suspension following the development of guidelines to streamline rosewood operations. All earlier suspension of rosewood harvesting operations exempted 5 companies operating in the Bui Dam reservoir area to create safe fairways and to prevent accidents during lake transport. The companies were Boachewa Timbers, Kambonze, Sidakon, Edututu and Sons, and Time Concept. On the 21st of February 2014, 2 companies were granted 3 months permit to lift rosewood. These companies were Menyeri Company and Commodities Procurement Limited. Following further abuse on rosewood, Honorable Inusa Fuseni, on the 15th of July 2014, reaffirmed Cabinet's decision to ban the harvesting, transportation, processing, and exporting of rosewood. All the existing permits of the 7 companies permitted by the Office of the President were revoked. On the 18th of June 2015, Honorable Minister Ni Osa Mills granted additional permits to 6 companies to process and export lying rosewood. These companies were Interlink Limited, Rayad and Wood Limited, Dero Limited, Kofi Vinyuk and Company Limited, Jowak Limited, Savannah Investment Limited, and Asomah Company Limited. The current situation, dating from 2017. It is important to note that when the current government came into office, there were 13 existing companies whose permits were supposed to have expired by 31st December 2016. But most of the companies were still in operation. The ministry therefore constituted a task force to assess the situation and provide recommendations and how to enforce the ban on further salvaging of rosewood. The Forestry Commission was also directed to sanitize operations in the forest sector in general and specifically the rosewood situation. Despite this, there were several complaints that a large number of rosewood logs were lying down in various locations across the savanna and transitional zones. A team was then constituted to conduct a quick survey of the logs on the ground to enable us to take a decision. The field report confirmed that large numbers of rosewood logs were actually lying in the field. The report also observed that this was due to speculative felling by the local communities in response to high payments from the operators. As a short-term measure to prevent the logs from losing their economic value through bushfires and harsh environmental conditions, some companies were granted approval to salvage the lying logs. As a medium-term measure to control further harvesting of rosewood, arrangements were made in collaboration with the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species and civil society organizations to introduce a quota system that will regulate how much rosewood was exploited at a given period. Records from the Forestry Commission show that as at 2017, a total volume of 56,190 cubic meters was salvaged and a corresponding value of 148,814,446 accrued. Similarly, in 2018, a total volume of 42,561 cubic meters was salvaged and a corresponding value of 122,946,151 accrued. From January 2019 to date, a total volume of 8,378 cubic meters was salvaged and a corresponding value of 25,119,884 accrued, all in Ghana cedis. Current observations and reported harvesting of rosewood. Ladies and gentlemen of the media, I would like to state that many youth groups are directly involved in the harvesting of the trees, especially outside forest reserves, and sell to permit holders. Most of the felling is aided by landowners and some known opinion leaders who are the same people on social media advocating for the ban. They condone and connive with illegal operators to harvest these trees. Current action by the Ministry and Forestry Commission. As part of efforts to address rosewood exploitation across the country, the following measures are being pursued. 1. The ministry not only continues to enforce the ban on the harvesting of rosewood, but has also suspended the issuance of salvage permits, including conveyance permits on rosewood. 2. Our rapid response team are on the ground to clamp down on illegal harvesting of rosewood. 3. On a long-term basis, a policy on tree tenure and benefit sharing for trees outside the forest is being discussed, which will motivate farmers to resist the illegal exploitation of rosewood and other tree resources on their farms and stop speculative felling by illegal operators. 4. Harvesting of rosewood is mostly within the off-forest reserves where the Forestry Commission has limited control. Emphasis mine, where the Forestry Commission has limited control due to our numbers. In view of this, we collaborate with the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, and the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and the various MMDAs to effectively implement the measures. 5. Another long-term measure is to establish plantations of rosewood and promote local processing to add value to the material. Currently, we are collaborating with Forest Research Institute of Ghana, FORIG, to develop fast-growing species of rosewood suitable for plantation development and rehabilitation of degraded landscape in the northern sector. Responsibility of the general public. The illegal harvesting of rosewood should be resisted by the general public, the regional and district coordinating councils, the traditional authorities, and other state and non-state institutions should join the fight against illegal harvesting of fresh logs as it was the case in fight against galamsey. The opinion leaders who are advocating for the ban on rosewood harvesting know the individual community members involved in the illegal felling. They should therefore assist us by fighting it at the community level. The Regional Security Council and the District Security Council also have the authority to stop the harvesting and transportation of rosewood within their respective regions and districts. We have to acknowledge that rosewood exploitation is mostly in the fragile savanna ecosystem, and if action is not taken to halt this menace, the consequences could be devastating to the ecological integrity of the savanna landscape and livelihoods of the people. In view of the above, I would like to give the following directives. 1. I wish to state that harvesting of rosewood is illegal in any part of this country. Similarly, the transportation and export of rosewood is suspended with immediate effect. Note that salvage permits were issued only for the evacuation of lying logs. Any fresh harvesting of rosewood tree is illegal and must be reported for immediate arrest of the culprits. 2. The Forestry Commission is hereby directed to suspend the issuance and processing of CITES permits for the export of rosewood. 3. The rosewood menace has become a national security threat, and I therefore appeal to all RISEC, DISEC in the northern sector, opinion leaders, Ghana Police Service and Customs Division, the press, and the general public to support the ministry in our effort to regulate the exploitation of natural resources of this country. In conclusion, I would like to state that the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources will continue to implement policies that will guarantee a responsible and sustainable exploitation of our natural resources in the country. I thank you for coming. I thank you all, including my very good friend, Oponsasu from Forestry Commission.